Namaskar. Hello and welcome to 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙪𝙥𝙥 channel. I'm your host Sree Iyer. This is a series of episodes that I'm going to be doing with Richa Gautam ji, and we are going to analyze this 3-year saga of Cisco versus the state of California, CRD, Civil Rights Department, on the alleged caste discrimination case. There were so many errors committed, and yet the CRD tried to brazen it out until it hit the wall. And what we are now wondering is, when a particular company or particular department withdraws the case, why is there a need for even mediation? Is this mediation going to mean that Cisco is going to actually settle? And if there's a settlement talks, does it mean that Cisco will say, okay, we'll pay so much fine and we'll bring in all these things? Because that is the whole thing that we are fighting against. What is this mediation? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. That's why I'm asking this dumb question. I'm hoping that you, the viewer, will understand the nuances of what happened here, the number of errors committed, and blind adoption of a faulty survey, despite being shown the right survey also. So lots of stuff that happened. So now I request Richa ji to join me and walk us through the data that she has collected. Richa ji, namaskar and welcome to 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙪𝙥𝙥 channel.
Sree ji, thank you so much, and always a pleasure to be with you on this really important show. You've been covering caste and CasteGate for quite a long time now, and this is a very important topic because, like Watergate, I feel like this is the important scandal of this time. The fact that a fake survey, a 7-year-old data, is being used, plus the Cisco case. The Cisco case that was recently just dismissed, and the CRD has issued a statement saying, they voluntarily dismissed it. And what we have found is, through our look at all of the public court documents, this is a sensational and outrageous fabrication, prosecutorial abuse, and lack of due process in this case. So if this case is being put across as that Exhibit A for a caste discrimination policy to be included, then we really have to wake up and smell the coffee and see why this is happening. Why is Equality Labs and Cisco case being used to target Indian Americans at this time? Because in Cisco case, Iyer and Compella, two alleged Brahmins, discriminated against John Doe, allegedly a self-identifying Dalit. But what we found is that it was an opposite of caste discrimination. Sree, are we going to share slides? Because I think
Yes.
I did put together some slides. And the title of my slide talk is today the opposite of caste discrimination, as we found. And we are just going to look at some of the fabricated evidence today that seem to have come across in this whole process based on CRD's allegations. So, going on to the next slide, I want to talk about, some of the allegations. First of all, this is kind of my summary slide, so people should take this away. CRD has obviously said Mr. Iyer, who was the CEO of that small startup within Cisco, discriminated against Doe. But let me say that the first important thing is Mr. Iyer hired Doe despite knowing his Dalit status, allegedly, and he gave away his equity and compensated Doe at the highest of levels in millions of dollars. So for Doe to file a complaint, his complaint was that $1,000, a few $1,000s of increment was not given to him, and hence that was discrimination, which it totally is a selective usage of data, because he does not mention that he was given millions in compensation. And Mr. Iyer also gave multiple leadership positions to Doe. So that is just the basic about John Doe, what Mr. Iyer did with regards to John Doe. But why I call it the opposite of caste discrimination is because Mr. Iyer promoted another Dalit within his team to the position that John Doe is saying that he was not given. And we will go into further details of this case. But this is something that people have to observe and realize, that there is something going on with regards to the idea that caste discrimination policy has to be included by hook or by crook. And all I can say is there is no hook here. There is no hook to hang the caste discrimination policy. There seems to be only a crooked, path. And let's go to the next slide to keep looking at some of the allegations. I know that these facts have been discussed in various discussions across media, alternate media, I would say, because the mainstream media has been only carrying stories saying that there's rampant caste discrimination. I want to, Sree, you just divert a bit from the CRD allegations and point out that CRD actually, the date filed the harassment claim, the one thing they did, which was also different from what average, cases at CRD, is they released a press release. When they release a press release, obviously the media went rampant, discussing this, and then discussing how the model minority is actually not a model minority, but there is rampant caste discrimination and there is an upper caste bias within Silicon Valley. Now, I want to now go to the slide. What it says is that CRD alleges within its court complaint that John Doe was the only Dalit in the team. Now, that is false, right? Because as I mentioned earlier, John Doe was not the only Dalit. There was one more Dalit who was actually the meritorious Dalit promoted in place of John Doe. So what kind of caste discrimination are we talking about? And the idea that except for John Doe, everybody else is upper caste was also a fabricated and spurious claim that CRD made. On the very next slide, there was another important point that was, spread across a lot of media reports. And it is also part of CRD allegation within its complaint. It said that Brahmins are at the top and the Dalits are at the bottom, as is typical for society in India, etc., which is absolutely false. Obviously, we know that in India also affirmative action has helped so much, right? But here in this particular case, if you look at a simple LinkedIn search of this company, you will find that, there's a diverse team, and Dalit is at a head position, and this was before Doe's complaint was filed, 2 months before Doe's complaint was filed. So this, all of it shows that there is some sort of an agenda going on here, and there is some sort of, manufacturing of allegations by CRD. The next slide shows. Yes, next slide, please. Because that is the other allegation, that it was an entirely Indian team. And this was a huge, allegation that there was nothing, there's no diversity, and Indians tend to hire Indians, and most of them are upper caste. So this was, again, a very, very, vivid story that was painted in media. And what we found was that not only were there diverse people from East Asia, from, of course, there were whites, and there were, all of at least 5 personnel were diverse, not Indian, right? And even if you see, just by name, which I don't, advise given the kind of things that have happened with this case. But if you look at names also, you see that, they're very diverse. There's Muslim names, there's the other, Christian names. And basically what I want to say is, long story short, it was a very diverse team as well. And on the next slide, the other allegation that CRD made was that John Doe had been given the lowest status that was available in the team. Now, this was a startup, so obviously it had a very flat structure. And most of the people who were hired as principal engineer, except for Mr. Iyer, who owned the startup, and he was CEO. And so John Doe was also hired as principal engineer. So this was, again, a false allegation. So John Doe had the same grade as Mr. Kumpela, who's the other accused in the case. So all of these facts, Sriji, I think a lot of them are being spread around and talked about. But I think the fact that I wanted to bring out some specifics that CRD has actually made these allegations in their claim. So the next slide, I think, is pretty much our last point that I wanted to bring up so that we can then go into a discussion. The fact that they say that John Doe was denied a position because he was a Dalit, which is false, completely false. First of all, it was just a titular position. John Doe did not say that he wanted that position, even though it was out there that, we're looking to hire someone for this position. And instead, another meritorious Dalit got it. He was awarded it. So, all in all, I want to just, QED my first claim that this is the opposite of caste discrimination. And there was a pretty diverse team. So, this is the basic foundation of the case, Shriji. So that is why I wanted to say, I want to just go to the very next slide, just the next couple of slides. We can quickly talk about the elephant in the room. The facts that CRD ignored from the court declarations of Iyer and Kumpela are very clear, because Iyer and Kumpela clearly state that all head positions went to another Dalit candidate first. So all of the head positions that were given to a Dalit, and also, like I said, Mr. Iyer was involved personally in hiring John Doe and soliciting him. And the next slide, which is I think an important fact, and then I will stop, is that Mr. Iyer has never promoted a Brahmin candidate within this company, right? To me, that is also an important point, given that Brahmin, the term has become a known term in media today, and as if Brahmins are constantly discriminating, and Mr. Iyer became the exhibit A of it, discrimination. So all in all, Shriji, I want to stop here and see if you have any thoughts about this, and how we can cull out more information on this, because this is going to be a huge process of making Indian Americans aware and engaged with this concept that there is wide-scale discrimination. It has happened to Jews before. It has happened to Japanese when there was the internment process. And to not believe and be an ostrich and say that this is not a targeting of us as Indian Americans within Silicon Valley and America, I think would be really being an ostrich. What do you say, Sriji?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I just have a couple of observations, Richa ji. First of all, I still don't understand this mediation process. The cases that I have dealt with, where once the complainant or the plaintiff in American language, once the plaintiff withdraws the case, what happens is the defendant, you're told you get the papers ahead of time, and then you just sign off. There's no need for a mediation step. This is my understanding. Why is because somehow I have a feeling. This is a gut feel. I'm not saying that this is based out of facts. I have the gut feeling that Cisco will still kind of use some sort of a thing saying that, okay, well, we have been found not guilty in this case, and therefore, I don't want Cisco to even pay a dime. In fact, if anything, Cisco should be asking for damages for having wasted 3 years of its legal team, of having ruined the careers of two meritorious engineers who turned into entrepreneurs. And their names are spoiled. Their children probably faced a lot of discrimination when they went to schools. Are you going to undo all that stuff? And I mean, what kind of a message would Cisco be giving if they say, okay, well, in this case, we have been exonerated, but we will still go ahead and implement some sort of something like this? That's what they shouldn't do. The whole Silicon Valley, the whole of United States was built on meritocracy. Why do immigrants come to United States? To seek a better life, because the system in the United States is good. It works for everybody the same way. Now, CRD is completely shown to be corrupt. The lead lawyer actually got fired by Governor Gavin Newsom. Not for this case, but for a different case. That should tell us that there's a pattern of this kind of a behavior in CRD. We don't know what kind of a Kool-Aid that they drank when they saw this case and decided that, okay, I will hang my reputation on this case. So I'm really surprised that there is a mediation stage, and that this is again, looking at all the different things that are being discussed in social media. I am kind of appalled that Cisco is not going to demand from CRD punitive and compensatory damages. See, because remember, in the withdrawal, they said that they will never, ever file a case against this company and this particular case. In other words, the CRD is saying we will never litigate this again. They've written it and given. So that's the position of advantage for Cisco. I really hope they demand that they be compensated punitively, as well as compensated for the time and costs involved. Punitive is sometimes much more than compensatory. That is the American legal system. The punitive is usually awarded to ensure that departments like CRD think twice before they come up with these kind of outrageous allegations wasting taxpayer money. That's my 2 cents. Please feel free to let me know what you think, Richa ji.
Ji. So Sree, there are a few points I think you raised, and I want to cover them. Hopefully one by one I'll remember all of them. So the first point is that there are two parts to this case. One is just these two Cisco engineers, Iyer and Compella. And Iyer and Compella have been released out of the case. Cisco has not been. There is a case against Cisco as well. And Cisco will be going through mediation. I believe it's on May 2nd. And so that is why there is a part 2 of this. And as you said, it should not really be the case. Cisco should have taken some steps to either even seek punitive damages, or even at least say that, now we are not going through this mediation, because as we had said earlier in their demurrer, Cisco had said this is a meritless case, and, we do not agree with any of CRD's statements. So the fact that CRD has lately issued a statement, which I read on, I think, Fortune magazine, is they have said that we will continue to vigorously litigate the matter on behalf of the people of California, and they've said that they are continuing to work with Cisco, and they said clearly that we are looking into adding securing relief and ensuring securing relief, which means obviously John Doe may get compensated. And to me, that is why I always say, if they're securing relief and ensuring company-wide corrective action. This is the quote I'm quoting from Fortune magazine. So that clearly means that they are looking to create some sort of punitive damages against Cisco, right? Some sort of relief for John Doe further.
It should be the other way around.
It should be, but that's the kind of extortion racket that is going on, Sree. That is the thing that we need to fight, because not only is a lot of things that are going on are woke and unconstitutional legally, but there seems to be an arm twisting and a very strong ways of twisting the corporates to do exactly what they want. And like you said, the two lawyers were fired. One of them was fired, one resigned. Melanie Proctor resigned, and Janet Whipper was fired by Gavin Newsom. So basically what that means is this is not just one single case. While caste discrimination is something we are fighting as Indian Americans, we have to realize as Americans that this is a much bigger scandal. That is why Cascade is a really beautiful name, because Tesla has filed a case against CRD, right? It was a class action suit. It's a whole different matter, but Activision was another one. There was one with Oracle. There's one with Riot Games. There's multiple such cases that have been, considered as by the company as over litigious nature of CRD at this time. So this has to be obviously course corrected eventually. But I think you also raised a couple of other points If I can only remember. I think,
Um,
yeah.
So the points that I raised are that Cisco should be going and batting on the front foot, cricket parlance, of course, rather than trying to say that we will settle. Because sometimes what happens is big companies tend to weigh the pros and cons. They might think, oh, what if there is some other case in Cisco where some other person starts putting a case on similar grounds. It's only this particular case that cannot be argued anymore. So what if they do that? So they may try to say that, in exchange for XYZ, you shall never come and come after us. I don't think that ever works, because you have to look at each case on its merit. And the more important thing is Cisco has had an established system in place that has worked for years. If you back away from that and now say agree to do something, then what sort of message are you sending to all the meritorious candidates that are working day and night at Cisco? It's your own productivity that is going to go down. That is my point.
Absolutely. And I hope that, at least Iyer and Compella do not buckle down and try to say that, okay, let's just, this is done and dusted and let's just go, take up, our life as usual. I hope that they pursue this, because I don't see that there is any sort of like non-disclosure or anything like that. It doesn't seem to be the case. So I hope that they basically talk about this, eventually, when it happens, and people get to learn about this, because Indian Americans usually don't care about these sort of things, and we have to start. We have to start caring about it.
Only a few of us are seeing the danger signs, and the others are still kind of waking up, and we are still having a lot of people sleepwalking through this whole process. But that is how the society is, Richa ji. The reason I'm keeping on urging Cisco is because Cisco has the resources and it has the wherewithal to set the compass right. This shall be the yardstick. Meritocracy shall be the yardstick. I mean, if they don't do that, most of the companies will just fade away. What is America today? It is built on the sweat of the immigrants, 200 years old, 300 years old, whatever number you want to put there. And you're just going to wash it all away based on especially a fake survey, a falsely created survey, when there is a more scientific survey which counters the whole concept of this. So why are they building a castle on a platform that is full of lies? That is my question. Why is somebody is kind of forcing themselves to put blinkers and saying, this is all I'm going to look at? Oh, there is something else? No. I want to just look at it this way. This is all. You're not a horse, for God's sake. And you are working on taxpayer money. I demand that CRD clean its act. That's my 2 cents. I'm getting a little upset here because I know how the judicial process works, Richa ji. You could be right, but you could still lose the case. That is the problem.
You could lose it on a technicality. You're so right. And the thing is that even though the CRD keeps claiming in public that they voluntarily dismissed the case, and it looks like a grand gesture, it is not, because the Iyer and Compella actually filed a motion for sanctions, which actually means that they called out the CRD on all their bluffs, the fabricated allegations that were made, etc. And they said that you'll have to pay penalty. I have read the motion for sanctions, and we can cover that next time. And it blatantly, clarifies all of these egregiousness. And that is why I think they aren't interested. People were asking me as to why is it happening close to SB 403, because let's not forget, SB 403 is hanging like a sword over our heads. And if that comes in, any one of us can be Iyer and any one of us can be Compella, and we are going to be those upper caste Brahmins, who could be targeted anytime. And Sree, as you know, there is always a litigious nature in USA, as we all know. So there are people who have written that we are waiting to file, and some of file cases on caste now that Seattle has a caste law and California is. So I've seen that on Twitter, etc. So this is becoming a big foreboding of what could happen to all of us. This case is actually now an exhibit A of how the opposite of caste discrimination can also come to haunt us, if we don't take action now to stop this SB 403.
Thank you so much, Richa ji. Let's take some questions now. We have a few questions.
Mhm.
Madam, what are the consequences for all those that made these false allegations? Who is going to take responsibility for the torture endured by the victims?
So this is
We
actually
seem I think she has momentarily dropped off. Sometimes if you get a phone call, and she was joining on our phone, sometimes if you get a phone call, it can disrupt you. So she'll join us back in just one moment. In the meantime, could you please like this video and like, share, and subscribe to our channel? Don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. We have a fairly low traffic. I'm surprised. This is a very hot question, and this is something that is really lighting up the internet right now. And the response in terms of viewership is a little bit less. I don't know why. Of course, in 𝙒𝙗𝑔uru, sometimes these things take a life of their own once they go online, and it is saved there, and it will it will continue on. So I'm still waiting for Richa ji to join. We haven't got her yet, so just give us a second, and then we can continue and have her answer this question. I think the question is aimed at the people who spread the lies. Yes, those people need to be stopped. See, this is where the punitive damages has a very salutary effect. When somebody is punished for what they did, then CRD will turn around and say what was the basis on which this case was filed, and they would in turn go after Equality Labs. Equality Labs is, after all, a company. This is my 2 cents. I'm not a lawyer. Go ahead, Richa ji, answer this question.
So I can't read it. It's too tiny on my phone.
I'll read it for you. Ma'am, what are the consequences for all those that made these false allegations? Who is going to take responsibility for the torture endured by the victims?
Absolutely. I think it is the victims actually who have to take responsibility. We are never the kinds who play victim, but we have to fight it out. And they have to file a case, hopefully at some point. And the Hindu American Foundation, HAF, has also filed cases, right? At this time, the good thing is we are putting up a fight. Hindu American Foundation had filed a motion to intervene, first of all, during the Cisco case, saying this one case cannot be transposed onto the entire Hindu community, and that was before we got to know, I guess, all of these details. Now there is a case against 𝗏𝘑𝘂𝘀 as well, who is the head of the CRD, right? And there is a case by Hindu American Foundation also. So good thing is that they are taking the legal action against these entities. So hopefully we will see some respite out there. Also, they have filed a case. 2 professors have filed a case against California State University for putting this caste discrimination policy and smearing Hindu Americans. So I think all in all, and Hinduism, defining Hinduism, which is actually, there are so many angles to this and so many constitutional violations of our fundamental rights as Hindu Americans, smearing against Hindu Americans, as Equality Labs keeps calling us, upper caste assaulters and rapists and things like that. So there's so much that we can do, and we have to get up and do something about it. Not just the 2 victims, but all of us can do, just like Hindu American has done it. A lot of us can do this as a group. We could file cases against CRD and take up cudgels at or at Seattle, wherever the caste issue comes up, because it's definitely ethno-religious profiling. Definitely, it as someone told me, that lady jurisprudence is supposed to have blindfolds on her eyes. This single addition of caste will make it completely make lady jurisprudence open her blindfold and look at us, single us out, and look at us as specially, peculiarly discriminatory.
Next question, please. Ajay Nair wants to know, if the oppression is hierarchy based and depends upon self-identification, wouldn't that negate use of such law as switches from caste to class?
Switches from caste to class because of hierarchical nature. I think
Yes.
that is a very important argument, and I have actually personally made it in some of my articles. And I can say that in UK, this was the argument that was used in UK, where there is a certain class based society, clearly, with the peers and the lords and the monarchy and stuff like that. Even though it's not constitutional, it's just so basically. I think that is an important point, and the fact we are challenging is that there is no real hierarchical nature of within the framework of varna or the jati. And so that is something that I feel that the American Constitution does not allow the state agency to interfere in the definitions of Hinduism. That is within the fold of the Hindu people. So it's unconstitutional and violates our fundamental rights.
And I think that's it for us today. Oh, there's one more. Bubble Bobble wants to know, if such bills become law, EL will gain financially the most via funding for the DEI caste sensitivity trainings, etc. Are lawmakers aware of the glaring conflict of interest with using this data?
I think this is an action item for everybody. There is an action item for us here that we can really take up. If in corporates where we work, if in schools, public government jobs, wherever we see these sort of trainings come up, it is our duty that we fight against it and make sure that we don't take this lying down and be called castes, and have people look at us as, oh, these are the people who do this to their own people. This is because this is a dividing game that they are playing between upper caste, lower caste, things like that, oppressed and oppressors. And also I want to say that caste.org is a public site, and there's bunch of analysts who are supporting it and have been working silently over a few years since the case came up. And so I think to just say on your Twitter social media handle that I'm a supporter of caste.org, it's going to send a message to senators that even though it's an anonymous site, there are people who are referencing it, who know that this is based on public documents from the court. And so this is a campaign that we really need to run also. Sree.
Thank you so much, Richa ji. And viewers, that brings us to a close of today's episode. We'll be back again in a few days as we analyze more aspects of this case. So before we go, I want to tell you that the reverberations of this case are already being felt in India. To know all about it, join us tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. IST, where Sri Delhi R. Rajagopal and I discuss some things from this particular lawsuit. This is all very carefully stage managed. It never is some like a genuine occurrence. This is all stage managed, and you will see the mischief when you hear what is going to happen in 2024 elections. That will be tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Thank you so much, Richa ji. As always, a pleasure having you on our channel. Namaskar.
Namaste, Sree. Namaste to everybody.